you gorgeous individuals, it's Kavya, and today I'm going to be discussing my top 17 favorite books of 2017. In 2017, I have read 53 books, and if I finish my current read before Sunday, I will have read 54 books, and as my goal was 50 books, I think that that is a wonderful number for me to have read. I am very happy with my reading year this year. It has easily been my best reading year ever, not just in terms of numbers, because I think that 2017 has also been my best reading year content-wise as well. Outside of books I read for school, I have only rated 2 books this year, 1 or 2 stars, and they were the only 2 books that I didn't enjoy that I've read this year. The majority of all the rest of my books have gotten 4 or 5 star ratings, so I'm extremely pleased with how this reading year has been for me, and I genuinely think that that is due to the fact that I started reading diversely this year. It was easily the best reading decision I have ever made, and I am so excited to see what 2018 brings for me reading-wise. But before that, let's get into my top 17 of 2017. Coming in at number 17 is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This is a brilliant novel. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I have a full spoiler-free review of it up, so I will link that either up there or down there for you to check out if you would so be interested. Essentially, I loved this novel with all of my heart. I do want to give a content warning for grief and loss if you do plan to read this novel, but if you can handle those themes, I highly recommend reading this one. This novel features a main character from a Latinx family, and it has a past female by female romance in it, so it's on par with my goal of diversely reading, but it's also wonderful in so many other ways. Whereas the theme of this novel is so sad, the author manages to balance it out with her talent for writing, because the writing in this novel is just so beautiful, and the way it's woven together with the theme and with the characters and with the plot is just done so well. I don't really like going into too much detail with what this novel is about, because I think it's better to experience it for yourself. The biggest thing I can say about it is that the cover of this novel is absolutely gorgeous, but if you read it, you will find the inside is even more gorgeous than the outside. At number 16, I have How to Make a Wish by Ashley Herring Blake. I have a full spoiler-free review of it up, so I will link that either up there or down there if you would like to check that out. But essentially, How to Make a Wish is a novel featuring a female by female romance, and the love interest is a love interest of color, and the main character comes from not the best family. Her relationship with her mom is very hard to explain. I interpreted the mom to be abusive, so definitely content warning for that. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you would call her, but when I was reading it, that's how I interpreted it. It kind of deals with the relationship the main character has with her mom, and then the relationship she starts to begin with this girl in her life. I think there are so many aspects of it that are so important. It's a contemporary novel that manages to tackle these hard topics, but as I said, I do want to give a content warning for the main character's relationship with her mother. I also want to give a content warning about the fact that the love interest recently lost her mother, and that is also a prevalent theme in this novel. So if either of those are hard for you to read, it might not be the best option for you to go into this novel. But I can say that I read this novel and I can tell that Ashley has a lot of talent in her writing. So she has 2 new novels coming out next year, and if you can't pick up this one, I would consider picking up one of those 2, because I am certain that they are going to be just as good, if not better, than this one. The next book on my list is Like Water by Rebecca Podos, and this is a book that I literally just read. I finished it about 2 days ago, and it managed to bump off another book off my list because of how much I absolutely loved it. I read Like Water as the group book for Predathon in December. For those of you who don't know, I am a host of Predathon, and this was actually my suggestion for the group book, and I was a little bit nervous about choosing it because whereas I love Rebecca, I think she is a lovely person, and I was certain that this novel would be wonderful. I knew that it was also not one that was very popular in the community. I wasn't sure exactly what it would be like to go into it because I didn't know much other than the fact that it had a Latinx main character who was also bisexual, but all I can say is that this book is an underrated masterpiece. I have not seen this talked about anywhere on booktube, and I'm so unsure as to why, because it is a masterpiece. I enjoyed this novel so much. It was absolutely beautiful. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I have a full Goodreads review that details more of what I liked about it, but it's really hard for me to form it into words because there was just nothing lacking in this novel. Everything the author put into this novel constructed a beautiful story, and it constructed a beautiful journey. I would definitely label this novel as more of a coming of age story about the main character, and as I stated, she is Latinx and she is bisexual. Her dad has Huntington's disease, and she is currently struggling with whether or not she should be tested to find out if she has it or if she should just live her life not knowing. That's a real struggle for her, and she's kind of trapped in this small town. Part of the trap that she feels is because of this being placed on her, because now she has to make this life-changing decision that will essentially tell her whether or not she will have a healthy life. Unlike her father, who is suffering from this disease, she also has to be there for him because she has to be there for both her parents, considering they are dealing with this. The love interest has just moved from Boston to the small town, and she is very upset about that. It is something that she does not want at all, as well as the relationship the main character has with her family. The love interest has a wonderful relationship with her brother, and I think that the familial relationships and even the friendships and just the relationships in this novel are probably its biggest strong suit. The author has a way of just writing beautiful relationships, and if you go into this novel for anything, I think it should be for that. Coming in at number 14 is Girls Made of Snow and Glass by Melissa Bosherdas. I read this in October with Bookbound Society, which I am also a host of if you did not know, so I will leave links to that and Predathon in the description below so that you can check out these two wonderful groups. Girls Made of Snow and Glass is a feminist female by female Snow White retelling, and all of those words sound amazing, but you might be wondering, does this book actually live up to it? It does. I was kind of nervous going into it because it did have all these words that I was so interested in. I love feminism, I love a female by female romance, and I love fairy tale retellings, so I was really concerned as to whether or not it would live up to these labels, but it did, and it was more than that. The feminism of this novel is probably one of the most prevalent aspects of it. The female by female romance is not as prominent, but I think that the way it was done very well, and I was very pleased with how it was done. But as I was saying, the feminism of this novel is so prevalent because we have two strong main characters, and both of these women were just so inspirational and iconic in very different ways, because Mina was kind of strong in the literal sense, in the more badass sense, but Lynette was more strong in her silent defiance. To clarify, Mina is the one who essentially represents the evil queen, and Lynette represents Snow White, and we get to see Mina both in the past and the present as she is the older one, and then we get to see Lynette as how she is now. And I think that seeing the journey of these two women was just really wonderfully done, and I highly recommend this novel. I think that, like Lake Water, it is also underrated, so I would love to see more people picking it up. Next up, I have yet another relatively recent favorite, which is Dear Martin by Nick Stone. I read this in November with the Bookbound Society, and you will tell that many of my favorites come from this group. Dear Martin is a masterpiece. We have had two brilliant books about the Black Lives Matter movement come out this year, and Dear Martin is one of them. Dear Martin features a main character, Justice, who is black, and essentially he starts dealing with racism, so he starts writing letters to Martin Luther King Jr. He essentially asks him how he should be dealing with this, and he talks about in the novel how he kind of wants to emulate Martin Luther King Jr. and how he wants to be like him in battling racism, but he doesn't necessarily know if he can do that. This novel is so good. I read it in like 2 hours, I think, because it was just a masterpiece. I think that it brings to light so many issues that we like to look over in our privilege and such, and even though I am a person of color, I don't know what it's like to be a black person of color, and I don't know what it's like to face police brutality the way black people have, especially considering I live in California, which is a much more liberal place than many others in the United States. That's not to say that there is no racism here. There is, but it's definitely better than in a lot of places, and I have been fortunate enough that I have never had to encounter a situation like police brutality. Many people are not lucky enough to deal with that. Like I said, we like to kind of look over that or look beyond that because it's more comfortable for us and it feels safer for us, but that's not fair to all the people who have to deal with this on a daily basis and the people who just can't live their lives properly because of their skin color, and no one deserves to feel that way. And I think that this novel really brings to light how important important it is that we talk about these issues because they are such important issues. And I think another important part about this novel is that it gives a platform to someone who should actually be speaking about these issues, a black woman, because she obviously knows a lot more about it than someone like me who is not a black woman does. There are just so many important topics in this novel, and I highly recommend that you read it because I think that this is one of the most important novels that came out this year. And now at number 12, continuing with this discussion of the Black Lives Matter movement, I have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This is the most important book that came out this year, without a doubt. It talks about the importance of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's about a main character named Star who watches her best friend get killed, and then she starts fighting for the Black Lives Matter movement, and she essentially starts fighting for black people. But I think one of the most important parts about this novel is that it showcases different types of racism. It showcases racism that comes straight from a policeman killing someone because of their skin color, but it also showcases racism she faces at her own school, being one of 2 black kids who goes there, and it showcases the little microaggressions that matter, because microaggressions do matter. I think that, like Dear Martin, it is just so important, and these 2 novels are by far the 2 most important novels that came out this year because they discuss these issues that, like I said, we like to look over, but we can't keep looking over because we're looking over it at the cost of an entire group of people for the sake of our comfort. That's not right. And now, on a much lighter note, I have Girl Out of Water by Laura Silverman at number 11. I read this book back in July during the summer, and I can tell you that reading this book during the summer was one of the best decisions I could have made. This book is just the perfect summer contemporary read. It's essentially about a Californian surfer on her last summer before she has to move for college and all her friends are going to move, but she can't stay with them over the summer because she has to travel with her dad as her aunt was just in an accident. So she and her dad are going to go help take care of her aunt and her aunt's family. While she is there, she learns to skateboard with this other character. He essentially becomes the love interest of the novel. It is very obvious, but it is very cute, and the love interest is black and disabled, so this novel also definitely has some diversity in it as well. I think that it's just a wonderful novel to read. It again tackles some hard topics, but it's also a much fluffier, lighter contemporary. I would suggest picking this novel up, but then waiting for summer of 2018 to read it if you haven't yet, because reading it in the summer is the best decision you can make. It just fits the aesthetic of that season. And now at number 10, I have a book by one of my favorite authors of all time, Release by Patrick Ness. I love Patrick Ness's work. I read A Monster Calls back in 2015. I really thought that book was a one-off and it was just kind of a one-hit wonder, but then I read The Rest of Us Just Live Here, and then I read Release, and I realized that Patrick Ness is an incredibly talented writer. I read Release as the October group book for Predathon, and I am so glad we chose this book because I think that it is such an important read. I do want to give a huge content warning because the main character is a gay character who lives in an anti-gay family, so it deals heavily with anti-gay rhetoric, and if that's something that will be hurtful to you, then definitely don't pick up this novel. But if it's something that you can read, it's an important read. Patrick himself is gay, so this is Own Voices representation. The topic of religion is also discussed heavily in this novel because the main character's family is Christian and his father is a preacher. And it also discusses sexual harassment against males, which I think is another important topic that we have a tendency to look over. Again, a content warning for that if it's something that will trigger you in any way, but if you can deal with it, like I said, I think this is an important read. Possibly the best part of this novel is that it normalizes male-by-male sex, which is something I don't think I have ever seen in a YA novel before, and I definitely think this is the most adult of Patrick's work because of the emphasis it has on sex, but I also think that the fact that it normalizes male-by-male sex is so important because queer sex education is rarely taught, and whereas this is definitely not a lesson in it, it might at least give some people who might be having male-by-male sex something to go off of because, like I said, queer sex education is rarely talked about and it is a topic that needs more discussion, and I hope that books like this will bring those topics to light. At number 9, I have 27 Hours by Tristina Wright. I will link my full review of this novel either up there or down there if you would like to check the whole thing out. I know that there has been a lot of controversy surrounding the race representation representation in this novel, and I think that the hurt people face is valid. The hurt you face is always valid, and no one should ever be allowed to invalidate it. But when I read this novel, I really enjoyed it, and that was a personal thing. Whereas this doesn't make up for any issues it has with the race rep, it does have very good queer representation and disability representation. So I think that those are also two aspects of the novel to be complemented, while we also discuss how it can be improved in terms of its race representation. 27 Hours is a sci-fi novel about 5 teens who essentially save the world, because teens are obviously smarter than adults. Like I said, it has a lot of representation in it. I really enjoyed how it was done, and one of my favorite parts of the representation was the ace character Brayden. I know that he fell into a lot of stereotypes, but I also think it's unfair to say that there should be characters who don't necessarily fall into stereotypes, because I know a lot of people who do fit them. So I think that we need to have a wide variety of representation that battles stereotypes, but also a few that fit kind of good stereotypes. For example, I don't think there's anything wrong in Brayden's character. I think it's just that he fits into the stereotypical ace character. In a lot of ways, as an asexual person, I do the same thing. So it was one of the first forms of asexual representation that I could really resonate with, and I was just glad to see an ace character making ace puns, because I do those all the time and people act like they're weird, but it's just a part of what I do. And now at number 8, I have Little in Land by Brandy Colbert. I read this as the September group book for Bookbound Society, and I absolutely fell in love with it. This novel has so many good qualities to it, I don't really even know where to begin. But I guess we can start with the representation, because that is done so well in this novel. The main character is Black and bisexual, and her brother has bipolar disorder, and this novel also has religious diversity if that is something that you look for. So there are just so many aspects of this novel that are done so well, so I highly recommend it. I really don't even know how to express how I feel about this novel, because everything about it is done so well. It deals with racial microaggressions, it deals with the main character's brother being bipolar and how that affects both him and his family, and just the entire journey he has to go through. He is not diagnosed during this book, he's diagnosed before it, but it's still relatively new to his family, so they are still kind of learning how to deal with it. It discusses important familial relationships. I love the familial relationships of this novel. It was done so well. It like showed an actual happy family, and there was a good relationship between the main character and her brother. Of course, they had fights and they argued, especially considering the tension going on with this recent diagnosis and such, but they still loved each other and they were still close, and I think that healthy sibling relationships really need to be portrayed more in YA, so I'm glad that this one was showcased. I can easily say that because of this novel, I will be supporting all of Brandy's future work, because if it's even half as good as this, it will be brilliant. At number 7, I have The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. I have said this a million times, but Becky is one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite people. She is a brilliant writer and an even more brilliant woman. The Upside of Unrequited features a fat main character from a Jewish family with 2 moms. That's some diversity. I know that it has a pansexual side character, which is representation that is rarely seen, so that's another reason to pick it up. The fat representation and the Jewish representation is own voices, and I think that the fat representation is crucial to this novel. Something else that's crucial to this novel is that the main character emphasizes that you can love yourself and still want to be in a relationship. The two are not mutually exclusive, and a lot of times people act as though they are, but this novel basically debunks that ideology, because that ideology is false. She does a good job talking about what it's like to have fears as a fat person when it comes to romantic relationships, and obviously I can't comment on those myself at this moment, but I have had a rocky history with body image and with weight. So from my history and from my personal journey, I can say that I thought the representation in this novel was done well, but as I am not currently fat, you definitely want to look at Own Voices reviewers if you really want to be certain about the representation. But from where I stood, knowing that this was Own Voices representation, and from my own journey, I can say that I thought this novel was done so brilliantly well. Becky is the queen of writing cute contemporaries, so if you are looking for something that is cute and fluffy, pick this one up, because it is the cutest and the contemporariest and the fluffiest. And now at number 6, I have a novel that I don't talk about nearly enough on my channel, Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali. I read this book back in July with Bookbound Society. I adored it with everything in me. I finished this novel in like 2 sittings or 3 sittings because I loved it so much. This novel features a hijabi Muslim main character who is a survivor of sexual assault. So content warning for the fact that this novel deals with sexual assault, and if that's something that triggers you in any way, it might be best to stay away from this novel. But I think that the way it was discussed was done so well, and I adored this novel. And I also know that this novel is own voices for its Muslim representation. I think that that's one of the best parts about this novel because I gained so much education from it, and I think it's wonderful when authors are willing to use their novels to provide this type of education. Of course, they don't owe anyone that, but when they do decide to use it that way, I think it's a wonderful use of their platform. I'm just so glad I chose to read this novel, and I cannot recommend it enough. All I can tell you is that you have to read it if you can because it is a masterpiece. And now at number 5, I have a novel by one of my favorite authors and favorite people, Queens of Geek by Jen Wilde. I love this novel so much. I have a full spoiler-free review of it up, so I'll link that either up there or down there if you would be interested in it. But essentially, I love this novel with everything in me. This is the only novel I have read by Jen Wilde, and I can already say that she is now one of my favorite authors because of how good it was. Queens of Geek is a novel featuring 3 best friends who go to SuperCon, which is essentially like Comic-Con for us, and it is told in the point of view of 2 of these characters, Charlie and Taylor. Charlie is a Chinese-Australian vlogger slash actress who is also bisexual, and she is in a female by female romance, and the other female in the romance is also of color. Taylor is on the autism spectrum and she is fat. Both of those topics are talked about heavily in this novel, and I think that this novel is the epitome of balancing fluffiness and cuteness with the discussing hard topics because it does both of those so well. You just have to read it because it features 2 adorable romances while also tackling, like I said, all of these hard topics. Just everything about it is absolutely wonderful, so please go read it because it's wonderful. The next book on my list is actually one that is not out yet. Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kahn. I was lucky enough to receive an arc of this novel from the lovely people at Spoon Reads. Let's Talk About Love is a novel about a black biromantic asexual main character. This is the first time I have ever seen my sexuality in a book. Seeing the words that represent me in a novel meant so much to me that I can't even form that feeling in words. My video review of this novel is not up yet, but my Goodreads review is, so I'll link that in the description below for you to get a more comprehensive understanding of how I felt reading this novel. I do want to comment on the fact that it has been brought up to me that the poverty rep in this novel is not done well. I cannot speak of that from personal experience, but I trust the person who said that to me, so I do want to note that to anyone out here who is watching. The love interest of this novel is Japanese, so this novel has quite some racial diversity. It also tackles racial microaggressions. Plus, it talks about the fact that it's okay to want to be a housewife. There's nothing wrong with that decision. Plus, it tackles sexism. Plus, it has good therapy representation for the first time in forever. This novel doesn't have a main character who has been diagnosed with a mental illness or anything. She's just going to see a therapist to figure stuff out. That type of representation needs to be showcased more often because it's okay to just go to a therapist if you want someone to talk to. If that's something that will help you, it's a totally okay decision to make. But most importantly, I can say that this novel is the best asexual representation I have ever read, and whereas there is not a lot to compare it to, that's still saying something. Now at number 3, I have More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. I have said this many times, I will say it again. Adam is not only one of my favorite authors, but he is one of my favorite people in the world. More Happy Than Not is a book that features a gay Puerto Rican main character, and I want to give a huge trigger warning for this book because it deals with heavy topics such as suicide, so definitely be aware of that before going into this novel. I read this novel at a time that was very hard for me, and it essentially gave me what I needed in that point. It's not just my 3rd favorite book that I've read this year, but it's one of my favorite books of all time because of the comfort it gave me. There's so much to this and to all of Adam's work, and he's known for breaking our hearts, and we joke about it a lot, but this novel, it didn't just break my heart, but it also repaired it in a lot of ways. And I just want to thank Adam for being brave enough to write about these types of topics. I think that we are lucky to be living in a time where we get to see someone as talented as him put out amazing work. And now at number 2, When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. I don't even have words to express what it meant to me to read When Dimple Met Rishi. I have a full spoiler-free review of it up, and that is still my most viewed video of of all time. So I will link that either up there or down there if you would like to check it out. But essentially, When Dimple Met Rishi is the first time I have ever seen a YA novel featuring main characters of my skin color. To this day, I still don't know how to express how that felt to me, because it was so surreal to see myself represented like that for the first time ever. It's still surreal that I have this book in my hands. This is an Indian person on this cover, and that is something that is still so surreal to me and is still something that I have trouble grasping because I have never had that in my life before. And it is own voices representation, and it is a rom-com about two Indian American teens. It is just so surreal that I still don't know how to form my feelings about this novel and about the author. You know, I heard about this novel back in like January of 2017 or something, but still now in December, I don't know how to express how I feel in words. That is the importance of representation. And all I can tell you is that you need to read this book. It is the cutest, fluffiest, most wonderful contemporary romance you could ever read. I am honored to have 2 copies of this book. I am honored to know the author, and I am honored to continue to support her next year when From Twinkle with Love comes out. And I am just honored to have been a part of her journey and to have been a part of this book's journey. And now at number 1, you all know what I'm going to say. Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. Everyone and their mother knows that Cassandra Clare is my favorite author in the entire world, and everyone and their mother knows that Cassandra Clare saved my life and that her books mean the world to me and that I would die for the Shadowhunter universe. So I don't know why we're still talking about it, but I will never pass up an opportunity to discuss Cassandra Clare. Lord of Shadows is a work of brilliance. I talk about how Cassandra Clare is my favorite author so much of the time, but there is something so much more special to the Dark Artifices trilogy. This year, 2017, was the 10-year anniversary of City of Bones. In those 10 years, we as readers have had the honor of seeing how Cassie has grown as a writer. So over 10 books later, she is still writing in this brilliant universe that she is continuing to grow, especially with this latest trilogy. And you know, City of Bones came out 10 years ago. 10 years later, we're getting to see how she has grown as a writer. I'm not just talking about the literal writing aspect of it, but I'm talking about so much more. The Dark Artifices is easily her best trilogy, and Lord of Shadows is objectively her best book in terms of representation, in terms of the plot, in terms of character development, and in terms of writing. So when I say that this is my top book of 2017, I'm not just talking about me anymore. I'm talking about how Cassie has grown as a writer. I'm talking about how this trilogy is so much bigger now and how this universe has grown so much, and we have the honor of being here for the journey of it. The only way I can explain it is that the Shadowhunter universe is my Harry Potter, and I will never get tired of it, and I will never get tired of experiencing more of Cassie's work. And I am just waiting for Queen of Air and Darkness to come out and probably be the best book Cassie has ever released. Those were my top 17 favorite books of 2017. Now I want you to tell me what your favorite book you read this year was, or if you can't pick one, tell me a few favorites that you've read this year. I love reading, and I love how my reading year went, and I'm just so excited for what 2018 brings, not just in terms of books but in terms of the book community itself, because I know that I am going to get so many more wonderful opportunities, and I'm going to get to do so much more cool stuff than I've been able to do this year, and I am ecstatic for it. And I want to thank you all for being part of this journey. None of this would be possible without you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe, because that stuff makes me happy. As I said, comment down below, tell me some of your favorite books that you've read this year. As usual, all of my social media and my Goodreads will be in the description below if you'd like to follow me anywhere else. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you are having a lovely day or night wherever you are. I hope you get to read some lovely books in 2018, and I will see you this weekend with a brand new video. Goodbye!